Good morning and welcome finally to part 10 of building the DJH 2MT260 kit. And firstly, yet again, another apology for being so long between parts. I've been otherwise occupied, notwithstanding being on holiday. I only got back on Thursday. Matey boy over there got third prize in the Gorleston Dog Show for Best Rescue, which was quite pleasing. And I've also been building this for number 2, son. This is a coal tank. I thought it only fair that I built something for him. So this is almost finished now, so that's what I've been doing rather than neglecting this, but doing that. So where did we get the last time? Well, we got as far as this. So this is what I've got so far. So it's largely the superstructure complete, and we've fitted the steam pipes, the chimney, the dome, cab, sandboxes both sides, the front part of the footplate, and there's a little bit of cleaning up underneath needed still, but I'll do that off camera. That's not entirely necessary. So as I mentioned at the start when we did this, that the section of the instructions are sections 2, 3 and 4 for building the body. Part 4 largely covers the pipe work, which I won't be getting to today. So what we've got is we've got part 2. Now there are a couple of parts on this that I don't particularly find satisfactory. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to defer fitting them, and they are the lubricators, which are part 98, which you can see here. Those parts, I'm going to defer those and get some cast ones at Stafford. I spoke to Dave Sharp of MOK, which I may have mentioned before, and I've actually got he sent me the castings for making the lubricators work. So the castings are the same as for his IVAT 4MT, because this is a BR version of the IVAT 2MT. The drive mechanism for the lubricators is substantially identical, although you have to adjust the drive rods, but I'll come to that when I get to it. That's more going to be part of fitting once we do the chassis. That's going to be that. So I'm going to leave those. Also, this part here and this part here and this part up here, part 81, 101 and 102 are only required if the locomotive was fitted with AWS. As I'm building for the locomotive when it was only a couple of months old, it wasn't fitted with AWS, so we're going to leave those. And the other thing, there's 2 parts marked 100, which are these parts here, and they are the inspection covers. They look like shed plates, but they're actually the inspection covers for the sandboxes, and they are etched, as you can see on here. They're etched. So what I'm going to do with those, I'm going to chicken out. I'm not going to solder them because the sandboxes are white metal. I'm going to stick them on with a bit of super glue, and I'll do that later. So really, off sheet number 2. Oh yeah, I didn't mention the other thing that we're going to leave off is we're going to leave the smoke box front off for the moment, because this will be fitted with DCC sound. I've spoken to my chosen supplier, which is U-Choose, and they've made a recommendation, but I haven't purchased it yet. They're going to do me a special sound project. They can modify the IVAT 2MT so that it sounds like the BR1, which largely means changing the sound of the whistles. But I will order the bits from them as this gets nearer. There's no point having 120, 130 pounds worth of DCC sound decoder and speaker knocking around when you don't need it. So I'll order that when I can. So the only substantial bits that need to be fitted are the front buffer beam, which we'll do, the front steps, which we will do, and the front sandboxes and covers, which we will also do. And depending on how long that takes, we'll then move on to page 3 of the instructions, which is more to do with the clack valves, the handrails, some chassis extension parts, and other bits and pieces. But anyway, we'll see how far we get today. I don't want to make the video too long because it needs to be edited, and I've got other things to do in preparation for Stafford. So what I'll do is I'll put my apron on, because I've got bare legs today. It's rather warm, and soldering bare legs don't exactly match too much, as I found out to my cost when I was young, where I dropped a soldering iron. The mains lead went between my legs. I dropped the soldering iron, and the first reaction when you drop something between your legs is to close your legs. So I closed it on the soldering iron, which was rather painful, and I still got the scars to prove it. So I'm always a bit wary. So I'll reposition the camera, get the board out, put my apron on, and we'll get cracking. Right, so welcome back, and in no particular order, we are going to do the front buffer beam first. Now, this is white metal, and obviously this is a brass etching. You might find on this kit that there is a casting mark along towards the top of this bit. Now, what I've done is I've used some of them. I've graduated away from Christina's nail files. I bought a pack of graduated abrasive strips for plastic modelling, and they're just as good for brass, obviously, and brass and white metal. It's just they don't last as long. So this one is 80 grade, and this one is 180 grade. There are finer ones, but I won't use them on this. They're meant for plastic modelling. So what I've done is I've used these along here to reduce the width or the prominence of the etching mark, and what I've done is I've kept on testing this against the bit just to make sure that there's no particular overhang, no particular gap at the top. It does overhang either side slightly, but that is a good thing, because it will mean that when you solder it, you have got something at the sides to solder. So I'll just dress this off a little bit with this. When you cut this out, make sure that you remove all the etching cusps on the front and the back where it's attached to the etch. So we'll just give that a bit of a clean up, and then what we'll do is we'll tin it with 145, and then we will solder it with white metal solder, if I can find a bit. There it is. So we'll just tin this.
No. Boris. Hello.
So this is the tinning. No need to go mad. Bit more flux. So that's the 145, and then we'll just put a dab of white metal solder on it to ensure that it has a nice good so that's the reverse done. Now the buffer shanks are also white metal, so you need to do what you have just done on this side. Let's just clean it up. Of course, what I did, I put it down in some glue. So I used so just buff it up around the holes. Now, you can do this one of two ways, obviously. You could do it one of many ways, but what you want to consider is the baffle shanks, as I said, are white metal. So you could fit the buffer shanks now, or you could do them after. And I'll just find the buffer shanks. Who knows where? Oh, there they are. So it's always useful with DJH kits to keep some zip top bags around, because the parts are often, rather than be bagged up in the same type, they'll be bagged up in sets. So you will find that there is a set of for the left hand side of the locomotive and a set for the right hand side of the locomotive, but they'll be sort of like one-off parts, so they won't be the same. So the buffer shanks and everything were, because there's obviously a left hand one and a right hand one, they were in different sort of locations, so you end up with a bag that's got multiple parts. So there's various cylinder bits and other detailing bits, but it's always good to have a couple of these around so that you don't lose your bits. So I'll just get rid of those back. So here are your buffer shanks, and I've cleaned these up already to a certain extent. and we'll just check to see whether they fit nicely, and they do fit nicely. So the holes in this don't need opening out. So now we've ascertained that, we'll put those to one side and we will fit the buffer beam. So there are two cutouts in the, well, three cutouts in the casting. You need to make sure they're for the nut that goes on the end of the actual buffers. So you need to make sure that this is seated correctly, that it's level with the top of the foot plate, and that the overhang on either side is as near as you can get it. So that's not too bad. Let's have a look. Right, what we'll do is we will tack solder that in a corner. So it's tacked, it's not too bad. It's not too bad. Let's have a look. Right. So we'll tack solder the other side now. Much the same on anything, check your work as you go along. Right. So I'm happy. I'm happy with that. Doesn't overhang the top. So what we'll do now is we'll solder it around the bottom. And that's the buffer beam. Just for reference, I didn't alter the temperature of the soldering iron. That's on the usual temperature that I do of 445 degrees centigrade. I didn't alter it because this is quite a substantial casting, and there's not any particular need. And then what we'll do is we'll just run bit of solder across the top. To fill in any gap. And there's the top. And we can dress that up a bit later with one of our files. So that's the front buffer beam, and what we'll do now is we'll just check the buffer shank castings to see whether they fit okay still, and yes they do. So that's that one, and the other one also fits. So while we're in the mode of white metal soldering, we'll fit these buffers, the buffer shanks, and then we'll move on to the next bit. So I'll do this off camera and then I'll show you when I've done it. And welcome back. And where's the autofocus? There's the autofocus. So those are the buffer shanks. They're soldered in. Again, I didn't lower the temperature of the soldering iron. It's white metal to brass. And as long as you're reasonably quick about it, there shouldn't be a problem. The only thing I'll say is make sure that you have the treads on the top. So that's that bit. And next we will fit the front steps. These are white metal to white metal, so I've got to find them first. Again, I'll go away and do this off camera rather than you hear rustling of bags. Just bear with me while I get the parts out. Okay, the front footsteps, rather than doing them on camera, I've done them off camera because soldering them sadly involved a little bit of bad language which I'd rather not broadcast. Luckily I didn't have the camera turned on. These parts are extremely delicate, and if you're not confident white metal soldering, they're probably best glued using your chosen adhesive. I will clean them up later when I've done a little bit more, when I get to the cleaning up phase. So we'll just do, there's just the sandboxes, the front sandboxes left to do. So I'll look for those again, and those are these parts, which are wedge shaped parts. These parts are the front sandboxes, so we'll clean these up and fit these by solder. These have got a little bit of flash on. In fact, they've got quite a lot of flash on. So we'll get the worst bits of the flash off. And then we'll clean them up. Generally speaking, most of the DJH parts don't come with a lot of flash on it, and the flash on these bits is rather exceptional. We won't bother about that too much. I'll go away and clean them off camera. Yeah, there's a lot of off camera stuff this time round. I'll go away and clean them off camera, and then we'll drill them out for the the filler caps, which we will super glue in later. Welcome back. I've soldered one of the front sandboxes in place. They are a curious shape because they are slightly asymmetric at the top, so that they engage with the boiler band, which is cast on the boiler. Now, fitting them, you can do one of two things. You can either solder them from the bottom and they solder through those holes, but what I've chosen to do is solder them from the top, and I've actually mixed my solder, so I've got a sort of an alloy of 145 and 70 on the foot plate. Now, it is a little bit tricky, this. The casting is quite substantial, and you need to actually hold it in place so that it doesn't move. So this is what we're doing. Just don't be too long, otherwise you'll melt the casting. Of course, you can glue it in place if you want to do that, but good practice is to solder where you can. So just run a bit of you don't want to be too long, because what will happen is that the casting will be released by the movement of your soldering iron. So there's the front sandbox. I haven't drilled it for the filler. There is a dimple where you've got to drill, and the instructions say that hole needs to be 2.6 millimeters. So I won't do it now, because I will fit it using super glue later, because I'll do that because it's easier to clean up rather than do it with white metal solder. Oh, sorry, I just got to pick my paintbrush up. There we go. Right. So, apart from the parts that I mentioned at the start that we were going to leave off, like the smoke box front and all the associated bits with that, the other things that need doing in this stage are the cab roof. I'm going to leave that off at the moment. I'm not going to do the back head yet, because that's just a one-piece casting which needs a couple of parts soldered onto it. The roof is a bit more awkward, and we'll do a program specifically about the roof when we get to it. So apart from the parts that I mentioned that we weren't going to fit, page 2 is substantially complete. So what we'll do is we'll move on to the third page, and we will fit a few bits from the third page and then call it a day. So the first part that we're going to fit on the third page is the drawbar strengthening part, which is this part, which is an etched part. So we'll just remove it and clean it up. So that's off, we'll clean it up. so we clean that up, and the other thing that we need to do, there's a tag here on the rear draw beam, and that needs to be filed down so that this part will sit. Now you need to be careful, make sure that you get this bit the correct way up and it fits on the bottom bit of the drill beam like that. You need to make sure that you get this right bit up, because the two inner slots are where your chassis fixes. So that fits nicely inside the cab overhang here and here. So we'll just run a bit of flux across there. See the part, and again tack solder it just to make sure that it's okay. It's not quite inside on that side. Let's see if we can. Need to make sure that it sits down between both of the overhangs so that there's no gap. Right, so it doesn't fit. So what we'll do is we'll doesn't not fit by not very much, if that makes sense. Right, so that's better. You need to make sure that it sits down so when it's soldered there's no gap at either side, there and there. So we'll just clean that up. Oh no, that's, yeah, we'll clean that up. It's a bit of a again. Right, we'll tack solder it on the other side. It's a little bit awkward, I don't want to drop it. Okay, that's not bad. So now we'll solder it all the way around. And that's the drag beam strengthener. Right, so just moving on, looking at this, there's a part that we've missed off from sheet number 2, and we'll get that out. That is, in fact, we'll leave that for the moment. Sorry, we'll leave that for the moment. And the next thing that we will fit are the 2 front frame parts, which are part number 112, more white metal parts. We'll fit those. And again, we'll reduce the temperature down to We'll reduce the temperature down to 270 degrees to do that, because these are quite thin. So these are the front frame parts. They're quite thin. And they go in these slots. So we'll just do this quickly. Make sure you get them the right way round. Obviously they won't fit if they're the wrong way round. And make sure they're vertical. So much the same as we did with the other white metal to white metal parts, and the buffer beam, we'll tack solder them. Okay, so there's the first one. It's just tack soldered in place, and we'll do the other one. Right, so once these are soldered on, they are vulnerable, so you will have to be careful about how you place the locomotive down, because it's quite possible that you will bend or break these. Sorry, these are a little bit awkward. So they're the two front frame strengtheners, or the front cosmetic frames. We'll solder these all the way around now. So I haven't mentioned this to you before, but when you solder like this, where you've tack soldered, if you don't know already, if you know already, excuse me, but for people who don't know already, solder away from where you've tack soldered. You don't want to disturb what you've soldered already. And then probably the best way of doing it is to solder on the inside. Let's see how it goes at 270. It might need to turn it up a bit. Yeah, I need to turn it up a bit. Right. I'm going to set it to 330 now. Hopefully that will make the solder flow a bit better. So we'll just put right, there we go, 330. Take your time. This needs to be done fairly accurately, because otherwise you're not going to be able to fit the chassis. The chassis fits between these and the rear drag box. So take your time. Don't try to keep the amount of solder to a minimum, otherwise you'll end up having to do more cleaning up. And it's best to solder on the inside, because if you make a bodge of it, then it's not so visible when it's painted. there are the two front parts of the frame, the white metal. So we'll just have a quick look and see what we can do next. I'm going to leave off anything that needs drilling, so we'll do that the next time round. Right, so I've done those, and well, we can do the front footsteps because to a certain extent they will protect these frame extension parts. So we'll just get these are etched, so we'll just get them out. I think these parts, they marked A. Right, the cab steps are on the tender, so we don't need, so it must be these. Right, the front footsteps are marked A. They've got an etched lowercase a up here, so that you know what intermediate steps go with them. So we'll just do those. So they're cleaned up to a certain extent. We won't bother with the hold and fold doing these because they are quite large, so we'll just do them using pliers instead. And there's the first one all folded up, and we will do something with these as well. We will strengthen the fold at the top. So I've got some spare 0.5mm wire, and what we're going to do, we'll put a bit of wire across the fold at the top where it fits, where it bends, and this will be to provide additional because where the half etch is, it can be quite vulnerable. So if you can see there, I've soldered a bit of 0.5mm brass wire across the half etch. And again, you can do this one of two ways. You can either solder this part to the foot plate and then solder the intermediate step, or you can solder the intermediate step and then solder it to the foot plate. We're going to solder this to the foot plate and add the intermediate step afterwards. So what we've done here, put a bit of flux on the inside of the step. Just run the soldering iron round. So there is a part to actually, there is a location for this, which seems logical. So you would think that it goes right up against the buffer beam, but it doesn't. There is a... Right, so we're fitting the front foot step, which we bent up. We've put a strengthening piece behind the top half etch 0.5mm wire. We've drilled the 2 holes in the foot plate for the handrail, and we'll just mount this either side of where the handrail goes. So we just put a little bit on the front face. And plenty of flux. And there it is. Just check that it's vertical in all directions. I'll go away and I'll do the other one, and I'll finish off and I'll just show you what I've done when I've finished rather than do it. I apologise if the camera cut out. It's sometimes, if you record more than 29 minutes, sometimes it cuts out. So I'll come back. I apologise if there's bits missing. I'll come back when I've done the other footstep. Okay, so we're going to call it a day at what I've done for the moment. I've done a little bit of cleaning up, which may be evident. So I've cleaned the front footsteps up. I've also fitted the grab handles on either side. I've got to drill out the lifting holes, which I will do at a later date. So we've fitted substantially the front part of the locomotive, leaving out the parts that I'm going to get replacements for at Stafford. We've fitted the front sandboxes, we've fitted the rear drag beam extension strengthening plate, and there are a few other bits that are going to be fitted using super glue. We've done the front frame extensions and we've done the front footsteps, and everything is nice and square and substantially fitted. And thank you for watching this episode, and hopefully we'll come back and do another one in the not too distant future. Just quickly before I go, if you are viewing this and you are going to Guildex at Stafford, please say hello. I will be knocking around filming various things, and as a change this year there will be some live presentations from the balcony. Spaces are limited to 30 for each session, so if you want to come and see what's going on the balcony, make sure you get in as soon as possible. The details of what the events will be shortly publicised, so watch out for those, and see you at Stafford. If not, see you the next time with part 11. Thank you for watching.